one half house was a real masterpiece of architectural design penned by the architect John Hejduk that was never fated to be built. But just because it's not built out of wood, steel, and glass doesn't mean that we can't see what it would have been like to occupy or to live in. So let's explore the one half house together. Hey there, my name is Stewart Hicks, and I'm an associate professor of architecture at the University of Illinois at Chicago, where I teach lecture courses and design studios. John Hejduk has to be one of the most influential architects at our school, and you can probably see a little bit of his work in every single student project at UIC. Our director, Robert Somel, is a devout disciple, but almost everyone here appreciates Hejduk's use of shapes in rigorously geometric ways, but also in the very lively ways that he uses them. It's almost like some of them could get up and walk around. But one thing about John Hejduk is that most of his work, it lives in drawings and model. And to make matters even more difficult, he would often draw his buildings in ways that don't really give a sense of what it would have been like to be inside of one of his designs. And to be clear, this was part of his plan all along, and he believed that the flat drawings were as an important mean to test architectural ideas, and that it wasn't necessary to walk through a building for it to be architecture. But that doesn't mean that I don't want to walk through them anyway, so I decided to research one of his designs in depth, and then model it in the computer for you and me to explore in real time. Better yet, I'll even leave a link in the description below for you to explore it on your own, on your phone or your tablet or computer without any extra software needed. So without any further ado, let's dive into the one half house, starting with the timeline. The one half house was designed by the architect John Hejduk in 1966 and was never built. John Hejduk was born in 1929 in New York and would live to become arguably one of the most important architectural educators of the 20th century. He went to school at the Cooper Union School of Art and Architecture, the University of Cincinnati, and Harvard University's Graduate School of Design. While at Cooper Union, Hejduk lists Robert Gwathmey, an artist and the father of the architect Charles Gwathmey, as an important influence on his work, teaching him the important lessons about drawing and the abstract essence of form. After graduating from Harvard, he received the Fulbright Fellowship to study in Rome, and upon returning to the United States in 1954, Hejduk was invited to teach at the University of Texas at Austin, where he joined Colin Rowe and Robert Slutsky and others as one of the so-called Texas Rangers, recruited by the artist Joseph Albers to train a student to stimulate spiritual and intellectual growth, to develop intellectual faculties, and to enable them to grasp the meaning of architecture. The curriculum developed here would shape architecture ever since, with its focus on drawing and design through what would be termed the 9-square grid problem. After leaving Texas, he would work at AIA Journal Partners among some other firms before beginning his own in 1966. In 1964, though, he began teaching at his alma mater, the Cooper Union, where he would eventually become dean in 1975 and maintain the position all the way up until the year 2000, when he passed away from cancer. And in this capacity, he trained some of the most influential architects alive today. He would also become part of a group of architectural intellectuals called the New York Five that were exploring ways of including historical elements in their designs during the 1970s. But back in 1966, we were at a very early stage of Hejduk's career, but toward the end of a particular thought process. Hejduk developed his ideas for the half house after following ideas from a series of 9-square grid house designs, where he was experimenting with rooms that interrelate across the center. Then there's a series of rotated square houses called the diamond houses, where the boundary edge of the house dissolves. And after that, the wall houses arranged around a giant wall. And here we have the 1/4 houses, half houses, and 3/4 houses, each defined by a collection of simple shapes that are cut down by the amount that their name implies. Making the one half house in the computer is pretty straightforward, starting with the plans and then working our way up. Hejduk himself also made a number of three-dimensional drawings for us to be able to calibrate how the building would have been extruded up and into space. The overall grid that governs the project is really useful for getting the model into the computer, but I think it's important to note that this would have never been modeled in the computer as part of the design process. That's because it was designed before 2D or 3D drawing programs in the computer. However, there are some physical models made of this building, and that gives us even a little bit more information to work from. However, due to the fact that the building was never built, various areas change from drawing to drawing depending on when it was done. So for instance, the main stair right in the middle of the building wasn't always drawn the same. And it's really the most important part because it's where all of the three different elements come together. The one-half house design was developed without a client. It's almost purely an exercise driven by a personal, architectural inquiry, and therefore it's not reacting to any external influences like a budget or a site that would put pressure on the design. It's the result of John Hejduk working through a persistent, recurring problem, like an artist like Joseph Helbers would do, who would paint the same shapes over and over, studying them under different conditions. And oh man, does Hejduk know his geometry. The name of the house comes from the use of half shapes, a square, a circle, and a diamond, which is of course just a rotated square. And the shapes are sized so that the circle would fit in the square and that the diamond would fit in the circle so that they all nest together. However, their placement in the house, they're connected with a linear hallway. The room use isn't actually arranged by the shapes, it's more distributed by height. And the entrance sequence begins way out here at the corner of the site and follows a path down to the center of the building onto the ground floor where actually are all the private spaces of the bedroom. Then you go up a core of vertical circulation and to the second floor, which is this plan here, that holds the kitchen and the living room and the dining and the piano room. And then you go up to the third floor, which has a roof deck. The roof deck features objects that are made in the shapes that they sit on. So on the half circle, there's a circular skylight as a negative circle. There's also a 3/4 circle as a room pavilion and a 1/4 circle, which is a chair. This motif continues on for the square and then the diamond as well, each one having a little room up there and a skylight and a seat. The shapes are then composed in a very precise arrangement, with an overall grid that is 9 bays by 9 bays, whose size is determined by the walkways. So there is a simple 9-square grid in there, but some of those lines are more distinguished than some of the other ones. So this is a drawing of the half shapes, but then the kind of ghost of the other half. And one thing that I noticed about the arrangement of the overall forms is that if you extend the line of the diamond shape, it actually meets tangent to the circle itself. There are some other, I think, really interesting connections here about how the corner of this connects with the corner of this, or if we draw a line through here, we get to the edge of the half circle here too. Each shape is actually structured with an internal frame, with columns that are the same shape as their overall home. So the circle shape has a circle column, the diamond shape has a diamond column. So while the 9-square geometry governs the overall shape of the house, a 4-square breakdown actually governs each shape inside of it. And since it's only half of the shape, we only get 2 of those 4 squares. As expected, entry into the one-half house is highly scripted, and your view is controlled as we pass through the tight hallway. You notice the opening, and then when we turn down it, we're given a glimpse into the diamond shape, but a wall gets in our way as we approach the house. Then entering to the first floor seems pretty closed off, and this theme of turning 90 degrees, or even turning all the way around along your path of movement, really sets in to become the norm throughout the house. Also in this space, we can really see how each of the shapes are coming together. The bedrooms seem quite private and outward facing. As we come upon the circle space, the curvature of the wall dives away from us and leads us into it. As we approach the second floor, our view is pushed over to the left where we see the dining room table, which seems like it's pretty important. It's really exposed as we enter into the space. As we approach the circle, the piano room opens up to us gradually, like the circle's been doing elsewhere. As we explore it further, I really get the sense that each shape has its own personality. The square is always closed off to us, and it's open to the outside. It's also the most spacious, where interior elements align with its orientation. Then with the diamond, on the other hand, it's completely open to the interior all the time, and then closed off to the exterior. The diamond's interior is tight, and objects are rotated inside of it, making it awkward and cramped all the time. And then the half circle is kind of in between the two. It offers glimpses of its interior from the hallway, and then also opens up as you go deeper into it to the outside. Even as we get to the roof, it still feels pretty enclosed, and it's pretty crowded with shapes and volumes. It's like a park or a landscape of objects to be encountered. You also really experience the frame and the columns as different from the shape when we were up here. Elsewhere, the frame is rarely presented, but here it's liberated as a separate element. I think the half house is rigorous in a way that only an unbuilt house can be. The geometry remains perfect and doesn't need to contend with the variables of the built world. For instance, it has very little space for storage. And then walking around it, I was really surprised how much I could feel the personality of each shape as being different and unique from the other shapes. Each one is carefully crafted to have its own relationship to the occupant and to each other. If you had told me this and just shown me the plan, I don't think I would have been able to see all of this right away. It was only until I was able to enter it was I able to understand the different personalities that each shape has. Anyway, I think the one half house is a real masterpiece in exploring geometric rigor and complex relationships, and I hope that you enjoyed exploring it with me. Please leave your thoughts about the one half house in the comments below. I'd love to hear about what you think about it, and if you agree or disagree with what I came up with. Also, please feel free to offer some suggestions of other lost architecture that you'd like to see built in the computer and explored. And while you're doing all that, why don't you give the video a like and subscribe to the channel for more content like this, and stay tuned for more lost architecture. See y'all next time.